except I received this insight about a title called Prisoner of War. The book.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV. We had a late start. When I tell you that whatever can go wrong will go wrong, I just had a couple technical difficulties with Alan. I'm so excited. Just to let you guys know, I'm super excited for you guys to meet Alan, and I'm actually going to be meeting Alan, a little bit more depth, just to hear all about his crazy, awesome, inspirational, all the positive words that you can think of, stories, because when I tell you that Alan, I believe, is 83 years old, but we'll really say he's 28 for today, for the hour being. I can't wait for you guys to hear about all the golden nuggets and all of the really wonderful, amazing stories that he has to share with us. So if you hear a little bit of an echo, that's just the sound being all wonky. And like I said, I've been doing this for about 2 seasons now. This is episode number 34, I believe. And it just goes to show you that just when you think you've seen something, you really haven't seen anything. So first, before we get Alan on the show, you guys already know what we have to do. First and foremost, I know you guys are about to be blowing it up. Once I put it on the screen, here we go. I need a hashtag positivity posse. So I know that you guys are rocking with me right now, that you're rocking with Alan, that you're appreciating all of the good energy that we're all bringing together here. Just so once we bring this all together in the community of people, this is going to flourish. I can't wait to see what this is going to turn into. But when you drop that hashtag positivity posse, it lets me know that you guys are rocking with me. Thank you, Jeanette. I really do appreciate that. You guys are amazing. Lou, Nancy, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. It's another potential issue we had is that I had to switch my shirt last minute. I was wearing a green shirt and we have a green screen in the background. So it was kind of like I was a floating head, which actually, now that I think about it, would have been a great idea since we are in Halloween, right? So I could have just been a floating head doing the program and everything, but I didn't want to distract you guys. Amanda, thank you so much for dropping the hashtag positivity posse. I hope everything is going well with you. I remember you said 2 weeks ago that you were going through a transition in your career. So good luck to you. You already know that we're sending you the best of energies. And we are on a late start. So I'm going to just get right to it, what we have to talk about for today, or what I have to bring up to you guys. And it's kind of two advanced topics that we really don't talk about on the show. I kind of like to do an open, when it comes to advice, I like to keep it open and pretty basic just because, if it might be somebody's first time watching, we don't want to overwhelm them. But you guys, I know we're going to be all okay. And especially Alan, too. I know you have a plethora of information just to add to these ideas. And I can't wait to hear, your stories and what you may think about these ideas that I'm about to drop for these people. So let's get right to it. First and foremost, you have to figure out your terminology to yourself, and you always have to be conscious of how you talk to yourself. I was reading the book. Everybody probably knows it. And if you don't know it, please go pick it up today. It's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And he talks about the power of your subconscious mind and how it helps you achieve anything that you want. So when you talk to yourself, right, and you say, okay, I'm going to try to lose 10 pounds, or I'm going to try out a new diet, or I'm going to try to work on a new project, or I'm going to try to get a logo. The key word in all of those is try. And I know I'm guilty of it too, but I didn't really think that the word try was as bad as what I thought it was. So when you talk to yourself and you say that you're going to try to do something, your conscious mind is going to think about some ideas to, try to help you get it done. And your subconscious mind is going to do exactly what you told it to do. So if you're going to try a new endeavor, or you want to grab a new achievement, and you say the word try, your subconscious mind is going to do exactly that. It's going to help you try. Now, whether you succeed or you fail, that is the end of what you're asking your subconscious mind to do. If you follow me, you know what I mean? Exactly right. Just do it. Don't say it. Now, once you go to try, whether you fail or succeed, your subconscious mind is not going to link the energies that you may need, or to bring the people or the money that you may need to achieve your goal. But, try to just work on, if there's something that you always say to yourself, just be conscious of what you say, because as we all know, everything that we see right now in our outer reality is always a reflection of our inside reality. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is don't associate yourself with past ideas and past belief systems. If you were, let's just say, back in the day, you really didn't have too much money. And now when you go to look at things, you say, hey, I really can't afford that. Once you have this new perspective shift and this paradigm change, and you believe that you can afford anything, first of all, that is true. If there's enough there, think about how many pieces of leaves there are in the world and how many droplets of water. The universe is abundant. So why is money any different? It's really not. It's a piece of paper. So, for really, that's all it is a piece of paper, and we give it a value. So when you believe that you are able to obtain as much as you want of it, and you say, oh, that's too expensive, or I can't afford that, that's maybe your past self and your past identity that you're identifying with. And as soon as you understand that you don't have to identify with some of the past things that have gone on in your life, you really start to live in the now. And you can understand that all of those practices that you had before, and maybe even mess ups, because I don't believe there's ever such thing as a mess up. But let's just say if you did have a mess up back in the day, that does not identify, and that is not helping you. And you can choose not to use that as an identification to help you with your process as well. And we can go on forever about that, but we have to bring on Alan, man. I can't wait for you guys to really meet him. Wisdom, golden nuggets, experience. What more could you want? And Alan, fortunately, stepped in today because we had a cancellation. So he stepped in today by the grace of his heart, and he said, you know what? Let's do it. He's trying to put on for the Positivity Posse so all you guys can learn. So first and foremost, let me say before we bring on Alan, I just want to thank everybody watching this right now. Alan, I want to thank you again for accepting this position to be on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Alan, man, stop living underwater. It's time to come up and get on the show. Alan. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Life is amazing. Life is beautiful, man. I'm just absolutely so stoked for you to be here right now. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but as you already heard, there are great things on the horizon. So you got to take what the good with the bad, right?
Hey, I have to tell you that while you were talking, the sound from your studio suddenly clicked in. I think maybe I could leave my iPhone.
All right, let's do it. All right, if you guys didn't already know, we kind of did a little bit of a cheat. I have him on
All
the
right.
I
Can you
had him
still
on the phone.
can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Can
Oh,
you still
great.
hear me?
Well, now I can hear you.
Look at that. See, everything has a way of working out for himself. And
Very, very good.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So, first and foremost, how's your day been, Alan?
It's been a strange day. I won't even bore you with the details. I had to run my wife off for a quick visit to the, not quite the hospital, but for some medical attention. Came back, had all kinds of issues with my son who's off on a trip and had to get things quickly in the mail to him. It's been crazy. And then you call me and say, hey, in a couple of hours, you think you could join me for a Zoom session? And I'm going, who is this guy? I said,
know.
sure, why not?
You know what's amazing is that even that you say you've had a weird day, you still have a super bright smile on your face, and that's what I can already tell, that you're just chock full of this great energy. And I just want to say on behalf of myself and the Positivity Posse, thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, believe me.
Oh yeah. So, man, we have so much to talk about. Alan, the thing that really stuck out to me the most is your adventures and underwater and being an oceanographer. So let's start from the very beginning. What inspired you to want to do oceanography?
Well, it's like what my book is all about. It's kind of mysteries. I mean, as you know, I just published a book during the pandemic. I had time to finally write it. And it's all about mysteries. And that was how I got started in the work I do, is just as much a mystery. I wanted to be a scientist. I didn't know how I would work in that field. Went off to college, got a degree, came out thinking I was going to be a nuclear physicist. I went off to a PhD program and quickly changed my mind, because the summer before I started my program, I worked at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and I tasted the oceans. I realized I can't go sit underground and be looking at linear accelerators bombarding particles in nuclear physics. I've got to get out on boats. And that's exactly what I did. I quit my PhD program. It was fully paid. They thought I was crazy. And I went and I joined the Navy. And then I got out and I went back to school and I studied oceanography, marine biology, started diving on natural oil seeps. And I'm getting to the answer to your question. And after diving on natural oil seeps for a while and beginning to find out that diving had a lot of fun to it, a Santa Barbara blowout happened back in 1969. And when that happened, I was thrust into a whole new line of underwater work. And I started to realize that the oil impact on the oceans and the ocean floor were so significant that it bothered me. They were deliberately sinking oil at that time back in the 60s to get it off the surface. Can you imagine the mentality? Out of sight, out of mind, out of the press. Anyway, I started to ask for funding to study the impacts of oil spills on ocean floor critters, the animals that live there and the plants. And sure enough, I got funding. So I went off to Hydrolab, and NOAA funded it. And we studied how oil impacts marine life. That's how we got to Hydrolab.
Yeah, and trust me, that is just a quick version, because I know you have so many pieces and puzzles that includes that lit the way for you, and I'm just so excited. I mean, there's so many ways that we can go about it. So let's just stick with this one.
Okay.
As far as receiving that money, and I know it was just a few years ago that happened. Did everything work out for you the way that you thought, or did you have some bumps along the way?
Oh, I've had so many bumps in my life. I'm bruised to pieces here. There were so many bumps in the beginning that, again, I didn't know how I would ever make a career dealing with the oceans. And as I bumbled along, if you will, things started to fall into place. I didn't understand them. In fact, many of them were quite scary because I had some near-death events where my life should have ended. And, all the way from grade school right through high school, college, things kept happening, events that I could not explain. And so those were part of the bumps, if you will. And they continued on right into midlife. It wasn't until I was probably near 40, but that's about halfway through. And since I'm 83 now, about halfway through my life, a major event occurred involving my father. And that's a part of my book as well. And all of those things sparked my curiosity about a basic issue, and that was, why am I here? What is my purpose? And I think those bumps in the road started to look like clues, if you will. And they were clues like pieces of a puzzle that I had no idea what the final image would be. Can you imagine if somebody handed you a bag of, say, 500 pieces to a 500-piece puzzle, and they said, oh, by the way, I lost the cover in the book with a picture of what they're about, so I don't know how they go together. You don't know the final image. All you have are all these pieces. And by the way, there's another problem here. If you relate this to life, in this case, there's no edges to the puzzle. You don't have those flat pieces that help you by working around the edge of the puzzle and working in. Mm-hmm. So here I am faced with life and all these things happening. They felt like pieces of a puzzle, and I didn't know what the final image was, but I was determined to look into it. And as other things started to happen, I started realizing I was getting premonitions. Mm-hmm. And many of the premonitions started to come true. And some of these were really significant. For example, in my work life, where I worked as a oil spill specialist, which is how it turned out my interest in the oceanographic end of it worked out. Working as an oil spill specialist, I had a premonition that the Exxon Valdez spill way back in '89 was going to happen. And I had this premonition 6 months before it happened. And I went immediately to the oil companies and told them about it. And they said, you're crazy, man. No, there's no way a tanker could go aground on Bly Reef. And that's really, I even saw in my image the reef it went aground on up in Alaska. And they laughed at me and scoffed and said, get out of here. No way. And I worked on them and I worked on them until finally one morning I got a call about 1 a.m. And the guy who was giving me the most trouble in the oil company I was working with as a consultant, helping them with training on oil spills, he calls me. And I said, why are you calling me at 1 a.m.? And, I said, I know I bothered you with my premonition, but this is cruel, calling me in the middle of the night. He said, Alan, this is no joke. We have a tanker aground on Bly Reef. And I know from the tone of his voice, he was serious. And of course, I worked on that spill for a long time. And it was a major spill event that even people as young as you probably remember hearing about the Exxon Valdez. That's like over 30 years ago.
Yeah. And, what's amazing about that is, you probably think, hey, I'm trying to tell you probably think you're the boy who cried wolf. And, the part that really stood out to me was the guy that was giving you the most resistance is actually the one that, ended up calling you.
Yeah.
Now, in one of the hardest things that I feel like people nowadays really try to understand, and I actually have trouble with it too sometimes, is when you have these ideas that aren't tangible, you can't feel it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. And, especially with science too, a lot of people have terms trying to understand. So for your instance, right, how did you battle with these things that you can't prove to be there from a scientist's perspective and trying to understand, okay, how does this even make sense? Did you battle with that? And at what point did you understand that they can coexist?
Are you sure you didn't know me? Maybe from a previous life or something?
Hey.
You are asking, you're getting right to the heart of so many key questions, things in my own life. I struggled with exactly what you're talking about because I was a scientist. I was a physics major. I wanted equations into which I could plug values and out would pop solutions or answers or at least something concrete. And everything that was happening to me was not very concrete. From the premonitions to the knowings, I would receive knowings that would guide me to do something. My move to Alaska was exactly that, knowings. It was not a voice, but it was a knowing that came into me. And it was so strong that I reacted to it. And we would need a 2-hour show in order to explain even this one event. But things just fell in place until the next thing I knew, I was getting an offer to move to Alaska within weeks. And my wife, who I had just married at the time, we're married 47 years this week, by the way. And she said, "What? Move to Alaska? You're crazy." I said, "I think this is a part of my destiny. I don't know why, and yours as well." And we did. And we lived there 15 years. And through it, so many wonderful events. And our children were born there. And so many good things came of it. But it's that mystery of things that you get that come from beyond this world, I think, that are of most significance, because finally during the pandemic, I'll tell you, I sat down and I did a timeline from the time I could first remember. And I remember events when I was 2 and 3 years old, just parts of it, of course, where I was seriously burned and in the hospital. And I got hit by a car when I was 5, tossed in the air and flipped around by observers that were there. And again, and all of those events through my life, nearly freezing to death in college, where I got caught in a blizzard and snowed in, and a miracle happened. And I'll get back to the tangent I hope I was heading on, but in that event, a snow plow driver was awakened in the middle of the night to go out and start his run. And he fought this crazy feeling. And he actually heard a voice. And the voice said, "Start your run now." And he finally caved in. He was frightened to death. And he went out and started his snowplow running, like I think he said, about 3 a.m. And he wouldn't start till daybreak. And he started his plow and he's going along. And the next thing you know, the same voice says, "Stop, check that car." And he could see the bumper of my car sticking out through a complete snowdrift, completely covered. And my friend and I were in it. And to make a long story short, he banged on the car until we started to come around. He massaged, helped us to get back to a fairly normal state. He got the car out of the drift, got ahead of us, drove us to another place, people he knew, and woke him up in the middle of the night. And we spent the night there. And he told me then, reluctantly, I remember his statement. He said, "I don't want to talk about this. I think I was going crazy, but somehow I found your car and you're alive." And he said, "You've got some friends upstairs." And I remember him pointing, and he wasn't pointing to the owner of the place we were staying. He was pointing higher than that. And he said, "Something drove me literally to find you and to save your life." And he zipped away. I never got his name. I would love to call him and thank him. Along my timeline, I continued to find these mysteries until I had dozens of them. And they're continually leading me to ideas like, again, do I have a purpose? Am I here to tell a message? And you know what? As I did my timeline, and they all started to make the picture much more clearer, I went back to one of the timeline pieces, and that was when I was around 40. When my dad...
This is this the story about your dad? About, is this? I want people to really understand that this is this is an incredible story. So whatever you're doing right now, just listen to Alan, because this story is absolutely amazing, and I want everybody to give their undivided attention to Alan, because I've heard this story once before, but I got chills the first time. So, well, the stage is all yours.
Well, thanks, Dana. But I get chills when I think about it, and I'm not exaggerating. I just got one. Um, it was an event that really changed my life because it woke me up. It started me thinking very seriously about all the other events, and then as the other half of my life happened, I was tuned in, watching for the events and what they meant to me and how I could be really of service to others to communicate these experiences. I was driving, excuse me, I was in Alaska, had just started a new job and only there about a month. And I'm sitting at my desk getting organized. And again, one of those knowings came over, and it was a knowing that gave me the message, go home as soon as possible. And I knew it wasn't to my house there in Anchorage, Alaska. It was to go home to New Jersey, thousands of miles away.
Hey, I'm in New Jersey.
I know.
Yeah, look at that.
I grew up in Leonardo, New Jersey. That's my hometown.
Oh,
So
that's north, but go ahead.
Okay. So anyway, to make a very long story, chapter 10 of my book, I got home. And when I got there, I still didn't know why. My father answered the door, and it was such a mystery because for him to answer the door was incredible. I mean, he was the Archie Bunker of my life. If you're familiar at all with Archie Bunker, that may be before your time too. But this guy he was a grumpy old guy. He was prejudiced. It was a wonderful TV show, but that was my dad. He was kind of crusty and rough around the edges, and he had names for everybody that maybe weren't so nice. He had a heart of gold. He was a good man. He just didn't know how to express it in a kind way many times. He answered the door. I expected it when I knocked, and I hadn't called my parents to tell them I was coming. I expected to hear a voice inside say, Edith. Now, Archie Bunker, by the way, in the TV show was married to a woman named Edith, if you can believe it. I expected him to say, Edith, get the goddamn door. He'd swear all the time and tell him to go away. We don't want any. But I didn't hear that. My father answered the door. And when I went to the door, instantly, I had a feeling that I knew inside somehow why I had come home. Because as I looked at my father, he was a different man. It was still him, but his eyes were so pure and blue, and he had the nicest smile. And he looked at me for the first time I can remember in my life. It was an emotional moment when he looked at me and he said, son, I'm so glad you came home. And it was like the connections were starting to be made. I had a feeling I had come home for a reason, and I didn't know what it was. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit emotional.
No, yeah. This is a story that you've been in, and I've had the same experience that you're feeling right now. When everything just starts to make sense,
wow,
it can get a little emotional.
It just he brought me in, and as he did, he put his arm on my shoulder. My dad never hugged me, I can remember. And in fact, you know what? For 2 years prior to my going home, we hadn't talked on the phone. When I would call home from Alaska, if he answered the phone, he'd say, Edith, it's your son. And he'd hand her the phone. He was really bitter toward me because when I moved to California and then to Alaska, I didn't know it until later that he felt that I moved away because I didn't want to be near him. He didn't know how to communicate, so I never knew that feeling. And that's why he wouldn't talk to me. He was so disappointed. But this one time, he's caressing me. He's talking in a loving way. And my mom went to bed that night. And by the way, I had to leave the next day. I could only get away from work for 1 day. And
one day. Wow. And he was there at the house. And
he was home.
Talk
Talk about timing.
Yeah.
And I got that night after dinner, he gets up out of his chair. He always had his chair. Nobody sat in it. And he came over and he sat down next to me, put his hand on my leg. And I'll tell you, if you haven't seen my book yet, you got to read at least chapter 10, because he sat there and he looked me in the eye and he said, "Son, a few weeks ago, which was when I got that knowing," he said, "I died." I looked at him and I said, "Dad, you're here. You didn't die." He said,
Like
"No." He said,
a
"I
spiritual,
died." What?
a spiritual death or physical death?
No, physically, he died. He died in the hospital of a heart attack. And
Oh, wow.
that's what it turns out was the knowing I got was probably his brother, who had died earlier that year, met him on the other side. He went through the tunnel that most people go through, and he was by a beautiful stream that was running. He called it a living stream, and it had music and sound and color and smell, and it was beautiful. And he described what it was like on the other side. His brother, who had died, greeted him. And as his brother talked with him, my father asked, "Why am I here? What am I doing? This seems like heaven. I should be in the other place." And his brother just laughed at him and said, "Charlie," my father is Charles. He said, "Charlie, relax. You're here with me now. This is all there is." And my father said, "Well, what about the other place?" He says, "Charlie, there is no other place. This is it." And my father was telling me how he says, "Wait a minute. I did so many goofy, bad things. I was not the kindest person." He was already seeing himself for what he should have been.
Yeah.
And his brother said, "Charles," and about that time, a light grew, an intense, bright light grew behind his brother and took over the communication, because maybe his brother's explanations were good, but the light was communicating more through his brother, and it was all telepathic. He said there was no words, no lip moving. And one of the first things my father asked was, "Why do I have a body? If I died," and he saw his body when he left it, he saw it in the hospital. He said, "Why do I have a body?" And his brother and the light said, "That's a temporary shell that you have. It's like your old body, but it's to help you in the transition to a spiritual state. The shock would be too great."
And he's explaining this story to you, correct?
Yeah,
Like,
my dad's
as you-
telling me what his brother and the light said. And at one point, my father boldly said to the light, "Well, wait a minute. I did a lot of bad things. Shouldn't I be in?" And I think he said hell. And the light actually laughed. My father said, and he never called the light God, but my father had trouble with the word God.
Mhm.
He said it was sort of like an immense sense of infinite knowledge and love. This light just seemed to have a love feeling of absorbing me for what I am. And he said, the light responded and said, "Charlie, there is no hell. Don't worry about it. You'll experience a hell-like experience." And now my father's like, "Oh, uh-oh, it's about to drop." And the light went on and said, "The hell-like experience will be the fact that you will remember, and you're already starting now, you will remember every thought, word, and action you ever had in your life. And you'll see the things that you could have done differently. You could have done better.
Yeah.
That will be your hell." And that's what every soul, when it returns to this state, experiences as a hell-like experience.
Now, I have just so many questions, but obviously, you're not the light, so there's no way to tell. But when you think about bad things that have gone on in your life, is that some form of hell that the light was talking about?
Now we're getting real personal, and I'll tell you something. That story that my dad told me, and it went on for hours. If we had time, I'd share with you a lot of the things he said. But to answer your question, I came away from that night, and on the flight back to Alaska, I wrote down everything he said. I didn't ever want to get this story wrong and the facts of what he said. But I started to feel the hell from my own experience. I started thinking about the things I had done that were cruel, maybe thoughtless. I never deliberately hurt anyone. I honestly don't remember in my life ever hurting anyone. But I did hurt some animals. I did some stupid things as a kid. I was playing with a spear once, and I thought this spear could never go through the shell of a turtle. And I was off camping, and I and it went through the shell, and I killed the turtle, and I picked it up and looked at it, and I cried. A very minor point, perhaps. But as I look back on it, I saw the stupidity of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other times that accidentally I hurt things. I'll tell you a painful one. And again, I'll get back to where I was on this story. I hurt my grandpa in a way that was so bad. I was off visiting at Christmas back in Jersey from Pennsylvania, where I went to college, 400-mile drive. And my grandpa called me while I was home for Christmas, and he said, a grandson to me, he said, "You know how much I love you. I wish you could stop by and see me on your way back to college." And now this was a man, my father's father, who had given me a diamond ring at graduation from high school just months before this. This was in my freshman year of college.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how much he thought of me as a graduation present. And when he gave it to me, he reminded me to be kind. And this ring could be a reminder. So here's this grandfather who I was so close with, asking me to stop by and see him on my way back to college. And what do? No, I just stayed for the whole time until I was so close to having to leave because of my girlfriend, and I was visiting her every day and every night, and my folks. And all I had was enough time to drive all the way back for class.
Yeah.
I never stopped to see him.
Yeah. Well, you can say that, hindsight is 2020, when you're in that moment, you're like, wow, you think that it's the right thing to do.
Well, let me tell you just how wrong it was. I got back to college, and within a week, my mom called me and said, "Grandpa died."
Oh, wow. Wow. But I don't think that, you can't really know that was going to happen. I mean, it's one of those things with the clue. You think that you're doing the right thing at that time. And it's kind of hard when you experience something like that. And, you're looking at it from what you know now. How do you feel right now as we're speaking, was that a clue? And how did you identify these clues, going back?
Yeah. I didn't think I would feel this way. I haven't told that story to many people. So, Dano, you have a way to bring out some really important questions. And the answer is yes. That did impact me greatly, and it helped me to realize what my father had learned. And I was already experiencing hell on earth, if you will. Mm-hmm. I was getting in early to pay my dues, if you will, pay my price. I hope I don't have to go through it as deeply, perhaps, when I make my transfer to the other side. Maybe I will have already felt the hell that comes with the things you do stupidly and wrongly and hurtfully to others. I never did anything horrible. I wasn't sent off to an asylum or to prison or to something where I had to pay a heavy price in this life. But I looked in my timeline and I could see the pieces fitting. But I also saw the many times that I did things right. I did things that were caring, unlike what I did to my grandpa. I saw so many things that were so rewarding, and I could begin to feel how I would look at that so differently in my next life. Because my dad often stopped and said, son, you may think someday, and here it is someday, you may be looking back on this story and thinking, was my dad kind of hallucinating a little? Was this a dream? Was he making this up? Was he embellishing it? And he said to me, son, my experience on the other side was like reality.
Wow.
He said, when you're sitting here with me, this is more like a dream. This is fuzzy compared to the clarity of thought and vision and sound that you have on the other side. He made what I think he finally did admit was heaven. He made it so beautiful, and he said, I can't wait to go back. And he said, by the way, he said during his stay with his brother, just probably after I got my message, my knowing that I should go home, his brother turned to him and he said, Charlie, wait a minute. Put up his hand. He said, wait a minute. And he thought for a minute. His brother telepathically said, you've got to go back. You need to go back. There's something you have to do. And to this day, I think it was to go back and have clarity with me, to have closure with me because of the 2 years of not speaking to me, the misunderstandings between us. We hugged that night. We hugged the next day when we went to the airport. We said goodbye, and he said to me, guess what? I'm going back real soon. It was like he knew. And my father died for good just a few weeks later. He passed away. He passed back over again, second time, and he stayed.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how it takes somebody that you've known all your life, 40 years, like you said, 40 years of somebody being a specific way and going into that other side just, for a few moments or however long it was, and to use that person to shift it just like that, to do a complete 180 in a way that you can understand is amazing. And I also believe, and I don't, there's so many reasons and speculations, but I believe it was meant to happen to you so you can share, and they use you as a vessel to show that the other side does exist, and I'm just so grateful. I mean, everybody right here in the Positivity Posse, we're grateful for you, Alan. I'm grateful for you, and I know that you being here today was it was meant to be right on point. Now, I need you to. I have one question that's just really, really. I need an answer, and how do I know right now that what I'm going through, or how do I identify clues that, that I don't have to wait till I'm, 40 years old? What clues can I look at right now? And how do I know that these events are clues?
Well, first of all, I think you need to start with things like meditation, taking time to turn inwardly. I find that my knowings, my premonitions, my every connection that's outside of really me comes when I'm at my quietest moment, whether it's meditation or it's maybe a vision I see when I wake up in the morning, just as I'm waking up. And magic happens in those times. I think so. You have to be sensitive to receiving the message that is there. The messages are there. The clues are there. They're all there within you because we all come from, if you will, stardust. I mean, what was it, 9 billion years or something ago, when all these gases were coming together and particles and planets were forming, and, the universe was being created as our scientists now see it and then begin to understand it. We were being formed too. We have the DNA of creation. We have the DNA of the source of everything that's created. Everything that we see and feel and hear and think and taste was a beautiful creation of the beginning. And it had to be something so infinitely beyond our awareness that we can only connect with it, I think, by turning inward, finding that little tiny piece of DNA that connects with us as who we really are, as souls. It was only a few months ago, I remember telling Lauren, our good friend Lauren, Michaels Harris. Lauren is such a gem. Oh God, I love that guy. And I was telling him, it was only a few months ago, where I was writing down some stuff, and I was also thinking of a prayer that I was creating and working on so that I could think more about it. And I wrote down, I pray to the source of universal love. And as I wrote it down, I suddenly realized what was the acronym for that: Source of Universal Love, SOUL.
Oh,
boom.
Like after that one,
He would reach over and he'd go ding on his bell.
Yeah.
to me, that was so phenomenal. And I thought, oh my God, all these years I've been praying to the source of universal love. I like it better than God, actually, the source, because it's so much more infinitely, I think, inclusive of all that is.
And
Now,
I think, yeah, people, when you say the word God too, I think everybody has their own interpretation. But when you say SOUL, source of universal love, everybody knows that what that feels like.
and that's the creator of all that is. And so, you know, going back to being a scientist, wanting to have things I can plug in, wanting to have pieces of the puzzle that all come together and give me the final picture. That's not the way it is. It doesn't come that easily. And I feel like if we are to go into the rest of our lives, living it as completely as we can, we have to stop and think often about why we are here. What really is our purpose? And by the time I got done with that, I realized what my purpose was. And that's what
you got to lay it on us.
well, that's what I wrote in the final part of the book. I mean, maybe I should read you that. Do we have time for me to?
Yeah, I mean, we have 6 minutes. So
Weren't you supposed to have a commercial in the middle of all this?
that's all gone. That's way beyond now. I mean, we started this show late, due to technical errors. So it's like, let's just finish it off now. What's 6 minutes? I think everybody in the Positivity Posse can finish out 6 minutes. Am I right? If I'm right, let me see some that I know that you guys are rocking with me. Alan, you have the floor right now, and I'm just going to give you, control of the screen. Well, not control of the screen, but you got the floor. Just remember, we have a few minutes left, and take it away.
All right, I'm going to read to you what I write as the final words in my book. Suddenly, I have only a picture of myself. Are you still there?
Oh yeah, I'm still here. I was just kidding. Okay. You know what? Let's just.
Okay.
I'll stay here with you too.
Okay. I finally realized that it is not the amount or the duration of purpose I fulfill in this life, but the realization that there is a purpose for each of us. That purpose, I believe, is to discover and use the capacity we each have to love and learn in our own unique way, with courage to stay the course. And then I say, the events presented in this book, their lessons, and the encounters I've had with family, friends, and others all around the world lead me to believe that a most important part of my mission was and still is to spread joyful hope for the purpose of life and what could follow. This book, I believe, is part of that mission.
Wow.
So no proof of God. I can't prove it. I'm no scientist can prove it. But boy, when you start adding up all the elements, you take all the pieces of the puzzle, you start taking all the hints along the way, they add up to a beautiful picture. How can you not believe?
And I think too, there was one phrase that you mentioned earlier, and there's one final question that we always do to wrap it up. There was one thing earlier that you said that you really stood out, and I asked you the question over the phone. You said it's like a puzzle piece, but you don't have the edges, right? And there's no way that you can finish it. I don't think that you're able to fully finish your puzzle pieces. I think you can build it as much as you can to try to give you a glimpse of the bigger picture. So I think it's definitely you're always adding to these puzzles, because you know why? Right now, everything that I'm learning from you, I get to spread that on to future generations, and whatever them generations learn, they get to pass it forward. So I think altogether, this world, we're all building our pieces together just to add on to what we've learned from before. And I think that's why we'll never be finished with that puzzle. So do as much as you can right now to build it, and you just got to keep going. So the final question, we only have about a minute or two left. So this is a very important question that we always wrap it up with. If there's somebody, Alan, right now that's watching this program, whether it's live or the recording, what is one piece of advice that you can give them to get out of their deepest, darkest points, if that's where they are, to help them live to what they knew to be true?
Forget what you think you are. Forget what you think you are as a body. enjoy the body. It's a blessing, but try to focus on what it is that comes to you in your dreams, in your deepest thoughts, in your happiest moments. That's when I connect with who I think I really am as a soul. I lose when I do that. I lose all of the disappointments, the anger that I have felt at times in my life. Because I think when you are open, as I am, as you can tell, probably I've been stepped on several times. I've been smacked a couple of times. And I go to that person afterwards and I just simply try to understand why they did what they did. And, quite often I've had people break down and cry because I wanted to know what was in their heart. What did they really feel toward me? Communication with other souls. This is it. Connecting with each other in this life, because we have to work through our bodies, through our limited brain. But what we have within the brain, this body, this soul, is something beyond our imagination. And I think that's why we're here, is to discover ourselves. Mm-hmm. And once you start to relate to yourself all the time and think deeply about yourself, who you really are and where we're headed, you suddenly become a different person. You become more accepting. You start to really love everyone.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Let's go, man. I hope you guys really enjoyed today. I know I did. Alan, I don't think you really can truly understand how much it means that you've come on the Weekly Dose of Dano and to share all of your really incredible life-changing stories. I know even when we get off right now, I have a bunch of stuff that I have to think about and reflect on, and I'll throw on my headphones and I'll meditate, just because, that's what I do, and you said it for today. So that was my sign that I needed to do that. Everyone, I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Just thank you so much, everybody. Alan, if somebody wanted to buy your book, where can they go?
Oh, they can just go on to probably any. Well, they won't find it in bookstores, I guess. You can. Archway Publishing is the company that finally published the book, but. I guess
what's the title of the book?
It's called Clues Can Light the Way, and it's a discovery of clues for the greatest puzzle of all, the purpose of life and beyond.
All right.
And I guess it just suddenly I drew a blank on the source of the.
Can they go if they wanted to buy it digitally? Can they go to Amazon?
I mean. Amazon is the best place. I just always feel a little compelled to mention that Archway Publishing is the group that had enough faith in me, I guess, to do it. But
yeah,
Amazon is really probably the easiest place to go and find it.
And you know what? I can drop a link too. So if anybody wants to buy, I'll just drop it in and they can watch it at they can click it and everything will be all right.
Yeah, it just, I don't push for the book. I don't push for it to get circulated, because I think it's people like you who somehow find me, as you did today, and the word comes out. And I think it reaches people when it's right. Oh, yeah. I really have that feeling. My messages will come out with my neighbors, with my friends, with people that tune into something like this. We just met today.
I know.
And you asked me to do this. It's the magic of timing.
Yeah.
So Amazon, of course, is a great place to buy your books, and you'll find it there.
Let's do it. And like I said, I'm just going to give you that extra, discovery. So I will drop it in the chat for everybody. So thank you, everybody. Come back next week for another episode. Actually, Lauren is coming on next week because he's going to talk about his Power of We Symposium and how amazing that's going to be as well. So can't wait to see you guys next week. Have a great weekend. Have a blessed weekend. And I hope that you get to accomplish everything that you want. Happy Halloween. Stay safe out there. And I'll see you guys next week for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you, Alan.